Devices to vibrate. All electronic devices to vibrate. Mr. Minority Leader. Majority Leader.
Majority Leader. Good afternoon and welcome to the stated meeting of August 11th, 2022. I'm Majority Leader Keith Powers, and I'd like to thank everyone today for joining us. If you would like to follow along, the agenda for today's meeting is posted on the City Council website.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please call the roll call.
Abreu. Arreola.
Present.
Aviles. Ayala. Barron.
Here.
Botcher.
Here.
Brannan.
I'm here.
Brewer.
Here.
Brooks Powers. Caban.
Present.
Carr.
Present.
De La Rosa.
Here.
Dinowitz.
Present.
Ayala. Thank you. Okay. Farias. Feliz. Gennaro. Gutierrez.
Presente.
Hanif. Hanks.
Present.
Holden.
Here.
Farias. Hudson.
Present.
Joseph. Kagan.
Present.
Krishnan.
Here.
Lee. Lewis.
Present.
Marte.
Present.
Mealy. Menon.
Present.
Moya. Narcisse.
Present.
Nurse.
Present.
Osei.
Present.
Palladino.
Present.
Wrestler.
Here.
Richardson Jordan.
Present.
Reilly.
Present.
Rivera.
Present.
Salamanca. Sanchez. Shulman.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Ung.
Present.
Velasquez.
Present.
Vernikoff.
Here.
Williams. Juan. Yeager. Borelli. Powers.
Here.
Speaker Adams.
Present.
Thank you. We're now going to hear today's invocation delivered by Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, the pastor of Church of Our Savior and the executive director of Catholic Charities for the Archdiocese of New York, which is located in a fantastic city council district at 59 Park Avenue in Manhattan. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
So let's just take a moment, bow our heads, center ourselves, and be still. Almighty God, in this city, we address you by many different names in diverse ways. We place ourselves in your loving and gracious presence, invoke your blessing and grace upon the work of this council and upon the people of this great city. Almighty God, you know our needs better than we do, But just in case you're a little distracted or forgetful, let us remind you of a few that are pressing. Please, keep our neighborhoods, streets, buses, subways safe. Strengthen our schools to educate our children even better. Keep our summer programs vibrant for the many youth and families who depend upon them. Keep our hospitals healing and reduce the barriers to health care for those most in need. Keep our economy strong with good-paying, decent jobs sufficient to support our families in dignity. Keep us always a city in which the most vulnerable and struggling feel welcome, receive a helping hand, and are offered opportunities. Especially, watch over those who struggle to find and to keep shelter. We thank you for the diversity of our great city, Almighty God, and your grace to make sure that we resist the sometimes strong temptations to divide us from one another and to tear each other down. Keep us a city that welcomes immigrants and refugees. And as we now receive a new wave of thousands seeking safety from their own countries and opportunity in ours, keep strong our rich passion for justice and progress, and also protect us from self-righteousness and intolerance. And as we encounter many challenges and obstacles, keep our spirits alive with hope. Almighty God, two special prayers to say. One, for any council member who just happens to be celebrating her birthday, a special blessing. And one final prayer. Almighty God, specifically this year, please, you've done a good job so far, but keep the Mets and Yankees at top of their divisions. Lead them successfully to the playoffs, to a fall 22 Subway Series. And Almighty God, one point of personal privilege. It'd be an adding blessing if after a hard-fought 7-game series that the Yankees emerge victorious. Amen.
Thank you for that. We will, I would just first of all, as a council member representing Monsignor Sullivan, both like to welcome him, echo his prayer for our birthday colleague, and very much echo his desire for Yankees World Series win. I want that to be officially on the record. The Bronx, I see you out there. I also want to just thank him and the folks at the Archdiocese for their tireless work on behalf of the city. Monsignor Sullivan is a constituent of mine and does work in a parish in mine, and lives in a parish in mine, and also works in mine as part of representing Catholic Charities. But the work that he does, the work that Archdiocese does, the work Catholic Charities does, is on behalf of not only New York City and New York State, is on behalf of people all over the world who see New York City as their home. And I think the work that they're doing could not be more important at this exact moment. We talk about individuals who are coming here and are looking and are very much knocking, very literally knocking on the door of Catholic Charities looking for help and assistance. And he is here with us in the city when he could be on vacation, he could be anywhere else, but he's staying here to make sure that those individuals are getting the helping hand that they need. And the work that he does is tireless. And I have to say, and I just want to make one point, amidst all that and really, really important work he does, he also helps me with a constituent issue on his block, which he knows about once every now and then, a little nuisance issue that made a lot of constituents happy. So thank you for taking the time on behalf of my constituents, but also for the work on social justice and the work you're bringing to the city, and thank you. And with that, I make a motion to spread the invocation for the record here today. We are now, thank you and welcome. We're now going to have the adoption of the minutes by Councilmember Kevin Reilly.
I make a motion that the minutes of the stated meeting of June 16, 2022 be adopted as printed.
Thank you. We're now going to have messages and papers from the mayor,
None.
communication from city, county, and borough offices,
M83 DOI appointment.
Received, ordered, printed, and filed.
petitions and communications,
None.
land use call-ups.
M's 84 and 85, multiple applications.
Coupled on call-up vote, I now ask that the clerk take a roll call vote on today's land use call-ups.
Abreu. Ariola.
Aye on all.
Aviles. Land use call-ups.
Aye.
Thank you. Ayala.
Aye on all.
Barron.
Aye on all.
Botcher.
Aye on all.
Brannan.
Aye on all.
Brewer. Brooks Powers.
Aye on all.
Caban.
Aye on all.
Carr.
Aye.
De La Rosa.
Aye.
Dinowitz.
Permission to vote on all matters on general order calendar. Mr. Majority Leader?
Yes, go ahead.
Aye on all.
Farias.
I vote aye on all.
Feliz. Gennaro.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Aye on all.
Hanif. Hanks.
Aye on all.
Holden.
Aye.
Hudson.
Aye on all.
Joseph.
Aye on all.
Kagan.
Aye.
Krishnan.
Aye on all.
Lee. Lewis. Marte.
Aye on all.
Mealy. Menon.
Aye on all.
Moya. Narcisse.
Aye on all.
Nurse.
Aye.
Osei.
Aye on all.
Palladino.
Aye on all.
Rustler.
Aye.
Richardson Jordan.
Aye.
Reilly.
Aye.
Rivera.
I vote aye.
Salamanca. Sanchez. Schulman.
Aye on all.
Stevens.
Aye on all.
Ung.
Aye on all.
Velasquez.
Aye.
Vernikov.
Aye on all.
Williams. Juan. Yeager.
Mr. President, may I be excused to vote on all matters on the general order calendar at the same time?
You may.
Thank you. I vote aye on all.
Borelli. Powers.
I vote aye, and when we're finished, if you can just call on Councilmember Farias, whose items these are. I think she just wanted to explain her vote.
Councilmember Farias.
Thank you so much, Majority Leader. This is a great and important day for me as the council member for District 18. I have my very first land use item on the floor today, and it's an important project for my Soundview community. 1810 Randall is one that I've been working on since the fall of 2021, before I was even officially sworn in as council member, and an item my community has been anticipating. I have heard far too many stories of senior citizens, often widows on social
Councilmember
security.
Farias, I think this is on the call-up, or it's the items that are on the land use agenda?
This is an item on the land use agenda.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you.
Okay, that's your fault.
Apologies. We'll come back to you in the general order.
Okay, thanks.
Speaker Adams.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Today's land use call-ups are adopted by a vote of 39 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. We will now have communication from Speaker Adrian Adams.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and good afternoon, everyone. As a reminder, masks are still strongly encouraged to be worn throughout the stated meeting. COVID infection rates are still high, so please take the necessary precautions to protect yourselves. As the first women majority council in New York City history, we are uniquely qualified and positioned to address the long-standing concerns and challenges facing the women of our city, who are the majority, as well as the millions of families in our communities. From legislation to protect and expand abortion health care, address maternal health care disparities, and expand access to children, this council remains focused on the priorities that impact New Yorkers. 2 months ago, the United States Supreme Court reversed decades of legal precedent by ending the constitutionally protected right to abortion care, a dangerous decision that will have grave and deadly consequences. Here in New York, we took immediate action by passing the historic New York City Abortion Rights Act to safeguard and expand access to safe reproductive health care. This is something the council and the entire city should be proud of. Even in states like Kansas, voters are sending a clear message that we must protect abortion care. Republican attempts to limit or outright ban critical care have been rejected. Women, trans and gender nonconforming individuals across this country know what is at stake, and we will continue to make our voices heard, including at the ballot box. But we are not finished yet, because we know there's still more work to do. The Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade disproportionately impacts Black people, people of color, and low-income and marginalized communities. Similarly, Black women face a maternal mortality crisis that is connected to our country's history of racism and unequal access to services, rights, and opportunities. The statistics and the experiences that far too many people have endured are striking and dire. In New York City, Black people are 8 to 12 times more likely to die when giving birth than their white counterparts. They are also more likely to experience maternal morbidity. A recent study released at the end of June found that maternal pregnancy-related deaths increased 33% in 2020, including a 40% uptick for Black women and 74% increase for Latinas. These disparities are horrifying, and as a city, we must take on the challenge of eliminating the inequities so that all women and birthing people are safe and protected. It may take a majority women council to fully tackle this issue, and I am so proud that we are moving legislation to address the maternal health and mortality crisis. Later, we will discuss the package of legislation that we're passing today on this critical topic. Last month, we mourned the loss of a longtime public servant, advocate, and friend in Joe Goldblum. Joe was a brilliant, caring man who worked in the city council for decades, advising multiple city council members and helping countless constituents. He is sorely missed, and we will continue to uplift his legacy. Our city lost another champion and former Assembly member and council member Al Vann, who faithfully represented his community in central Brooklyn for nearly 4 decades. Councilmember Vann was an educator and an advocate who fought for the empowerment of Black communities throughout his lifetime of public service. He was relentless and unwavering in his pursuit of empowerment, equity, and justice. He is responsible for increasing the diversity of our legislative representatives in New York City by advancing equal representation, fundamentally changing our local democratic processes to be more representative of the people of this city. We celebrate the life and legacy of Al Vann as a former esteemed member of this body and the impact he made on his beloved Bedford-Stuyvesant community in Brooklyn and the entire city of New York. Councilmember Vann's memorial and celebration of life will be live streamed tomorrow evening, and I encourage everyone to tune in to this remembrance of a trailblazing New Yorker and remembered public servant. In the past few weeks, we've lost 2 New Yorkers who died while on the job. On July 19th, 31-year-old Johnny Pizarro was fatally shot in North Brooklyn on a Law & Order film set where he worked as a crew member securing the space and watching over equipment trucks. We mourn his loss alongside his wife and 3 children. We're also mourning the death of 23-year-old Matthew Webb, a fast food worker who was shot and killed in a McDonald's restaurant in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. As a city, we must continue to uplift his family and provide them with the resources to heal from this pain and trauma. This past weekend, our Jewish communities observed Tisha B'Av, a day of fasting, prayer, and reflection. Although this is a sad holiday that highlights the destruction of temples and other tragedies inflicted on the Jewish people throughout history, it also serves as a reminder that we must all come together to protect and uplift each other in this city and beyond. On August 6th, we celebrated Jamaican Independence Day. Woohoo! This year marks the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence from Great Britain. Our city is home to a vibrant Jamaican community that has contributed so much to the culture of New York. I hope all Jamaicans across our city had a happy and safe celebration. Iriman, no problem. Yesterday was Ecuadorian Independence Day, which has been celebrated annually since 1809. I know our city is home to a large Ecuadorian community, particularly in my beloved Queens, and our very own council member Francisco Moya is the very first Ecuadorian American elected official in the history of this council. To everyone who celebrated, we wish you a happy Ecuadorian Independence Day. We have several important cultural holidays coming up, including Pakistan Independence Day on August 14th, Indian Independence Day and Korean Independence Day on August 15th, and Trinidad and Tobago Independence Day at the end of the month on August 31st. I'm so proud to represent diverse South Asian and Indo-Caribbean communities in my own district, the Great 28. So those days are of special importance to me and so many New Yorkers. For Korean New Yorkers, August 15th represents one of the most important holidays in Gwangbakcho, which translates to bringing back the light. This day symbolizes the restoration of Korean national independence, and it's a day of celebration that we want to acknowledge. As the most diverse council in our city's history with so many historic firsts, it's vital that we continue to recognize the many cultures that make up our great city. Later this month, we will commemorate several important days. August 21st is National Senior Citizens Day, which is dedicated to celebrating our wonderful seniors who I lovingly call the jewels of our community. We wouldn't be here if not for their hard work and sacrifice. We are forever thankful. As a city, we will continue to do everything in our power to support and salute our amazing seniors. On Friday, August 26th, we will be celebrating Women's Equality Day, which was championed by New York City's own Congresswoman Bella Abzug in the early 1970s. Especially in light of the recent rollback in women's rights across the country, it is especially important to recognize that the struggle for gender equality is still ongoing. As the first women majority council in our city's history, I am extraordinarily proud of what we have and what we will accomplish to protect and boost the rights of women across New York City. Next, I want to announce a new addition to our council team. Please join me, council members, in welcoming Drew Zimmerman, who is serving as the council's new digital director. Welcome to the council, Drew. And of course, as was mentioned by Monsignor, we are celebrating our own Margie. Happy birthday, council member Marjorie Velasquez.
Leo season.
Woohoo! And finally, please join me in congratulating our own council member, Pirina Sanchez, and her family on the birth of their beautiful baby boy. Congratulations, Pirina! We got another baby in the council family and working on some more. Okay, now let's move on to our stated agenda. Today, we are voting on several legislative, land use, and finance items. We will be voting on the following land use items. The Lirio, MTA Site 806 9th Avenue, will facilitate the construction of a new 9-story mixed-use building that would include 111 affordable housing units, 67 of which would be designated as supportive units for formerly homeless households, ground floor retail, and new office space for the MTA. The council is modifying the map amendment to remove lots from the rezoning area that are not necessary to facilitate the development of affordable housing. The council is also modifying the text amendment to more precisely target the language of the newly created special permit for the creation of affordable housing in this project in Councilmember Botch's district. 1810 Randall Avenue rezoning will facilitate the redevelopment of the existing obsolete church into a new 8-story mixed-use building. It will include an upgraded new house of worship and community center for the church, 167 affordable senior housing units, and approximately 16 accessory parking spaces on the ground floor in Councilmember Farias's district. We will also be voting on the following finance items. The council will vote on a transparency resolution approving changes of certain organizations receiving funding in the expense budget. Next, the council will vote on Introduction 600, which would implement a state authorizing law allowing the city to provide a rebate of real property taxes for eligible properties on fiscal year 2022 property taxes. And finally, we will vote on our maternal and reproductive health care package. As the first women majority in the New York City Council, I can't say it enough. We've made it clear that certain issues are prioritized differently when there are women and mothers at the helm. In the wake of the Supreme Court's dangerous decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, this council took action last month by passing the New York City Abortion Rights Act, an unprecedented legislative package to safeguard and expand abortion and reproductive health care across our 5 boroughs. We will continue this pattern by voting on a package of 7 bills and 5 resolutions addressing maternal health, mortality, and morbidity, issues that have long been championed by members of this body. Introduction 86, sponsored by Public Advocate Jumaane Williams by request of the Bronx Borough President, would require an agency designated by the mayor to administer public education on the city's standards for respectful care at birth, as well as information regarding the right to be free from discrimination in relation to pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition, reasonable workplace accommodations for persons who are pregnant or were recently pregnant, and caregivers. It would also provide rights for a person who is pregnant or was recently pregnant under the Disabilities Benefits Law and Paid Family Leave Benefits Law, Earned Safe and Sick Time Act, and Temporary Schedule Change Law, while ensuring information is provided on how to appoint a healthy care proxy. Introduction 409, sponsored by Councilmember Farrah Lewis, would require the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to post the annual maternal mortality and morbidity report on its website. The annual maternal mortality and morbidity report is mandated per Local Law 188 of 2018. However, there was no requirement for the data to be posted on the department's website until now. Introduction 482, also sponsored by Councilmember Lewis, would require the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to provide education on polycystic ovary syndrome and endometriosis by posting information on its website. The Department of Health will also be required to submit a report regarding education efforts on both conditions to the Mayor and Speaker of the Council no later than March 1st, 2023. Introduction 472, sponsored by Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez, would require the Department of Health to establish a program to train doulas and provide doula services to residents of marginalized neighborhoods in all 5 boroughs at no cost to the resident. Doulas will be trained in birth equity, trauma-informed care, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, navigating the hospital environment, and support services available to low-income birthing people and their families. The Health Department will also be required to submit a report to the Mayor and Speaker of the Council on the merits of the program. Introduction 478, sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Hudson, would require an agency designated by the Mayor to provide education and information regarding services offered by doulas and midwives, the evidence-based benefits of such services, and free and low-cost resources related to such services in the city. The administering agency would also be required to submit a report describing the message of targeted outreach used to the mayor and speaker of the council and post it online. Introduction 490, sponsored by Councilmember Julie Menon, would require the Department of Health to conduct research on sexual and reproductive health disparities within the city and provide sexual and reproductive health services. In providing these services, the department will be responsible for conducting outreach and providing education and support to individuals regarding issues related to sexual and reproductive health, especially low-income individuals and those without health insurance. The Department of Health would also make referrals to affordable and accessible services related to contraception, abortion, family planning, breast and cervical cancer screenings, and counseling, testing, and treatment for HIV and sexually transmitted infections. Introduction 509, sponsored by Councilmember Althea Stevens, would require an agency designated by the mayor to administer a public education program that informs the public regarding maternal mortality and severe maternal morbidity. The Department of Health would also be required to report on the total births in the city, disaggregated by vaginal and cesarean sections, and whether the pregnancy was considered low risk. The Department of Health would also be required to issue recommendations to reduce maternal mortality and severe maternal morbidity, including efforts to reduce the risks associated with unplanned cesarean delivery and efforts to address inequities across patient demographics. We are also voting on several resolutions in this package. Resolution 92, sponsored by Public Advocate Williams, would call on Congress to pass and the President to sign the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act of 2021 to make critical investments in and advance policies that would help end preventable maternal mortality and close the racial and ethnic disparities in maternal health care. Resolution 95, sponsored by Councilmember Carlina Rivera, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass legislation that would require maternal health providers to supply individuals with a planned C-section and those who undergo an unplanned C-section with a standardized written communication about the procedure to ensure universal dissemination of information to improve health outcomes for birthing parents and newborns. Resolution 205, also sponsored by Councilmember Rivera, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass legislation making doula care more accessible to individuals with Medicaid and those without health insurance. Resolution 244, also sponsored by Public Advocate Williams, would call on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to expand funding for the Healthy Start Brooklyn Doula Program, known as By My Side, in order to provide free doula services to low-income birthing parents in Brooklyn who disproportionately face the risks of infant mortality, low birth weight, preterm birth, and other challenges. We want to thank staff, Harbani, Ahuja, Sarah Liss, and Shmita Deshmukh. Thank you. Before I turn it over to the Majority Leader, I'd like to introduce Public Advocate Jumaane Williams to say a few words about his important legislation.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and the Majority Leader. That's a pretty cool chair. Happy birthday to Councilmember, and I do have to say, let's go Mets. But I gotta say, I'm sorry. Birth equity is a social justice issue, one too often ignored, facing people too often unheard. It's one that is personal to so many New Yorkers, so many people in this room, and I never knew how personal it would be for myself and my family. We began working on this piece of legislation about 2 years ago, before I even knew how hard it would hit home, and that's an indication of how important it is to have diverse staff. It was the black women of my office who brought something to my attention that I never knew even existed. And by now, as many of you know, my wife and I had one heck of a year. And I have to tell you, I didn't even know what my wife was missing in her first initial conversations with doctors until we found a doctor that cared. When she was first diagnosed with cervical cancer, every doctor immediately wanted to remove her uterus. And I thought it might be a good idea because of cervical cancer. We finally found a doctor who was listening to her, saying that she wanted to have children. And we've been told it will be difficult. We're told, unfortunately, for too many, it's a different outcome. While she was never listened to, she was never heard. It's one of the reasons for this inequity, for this pain, is that no one seems willing to hear the story, to be alongside her throughout this process, to see the force of the systems against her and the strength she summoned to fight them, was incredible and inspiring. We shared our story and hope that many people who have suffered in silence would feel solidarity and find support, that our story would resonate in homes across the city and help to bring people together, and ultimately that we'd be able to change the systems that led to the circumstances my family and many of yours have faced. We had made a decision that if something happened, I would go with the child. But I do remember being in the room when my child came out, and as I was told she had forgotten to breathe, and my wife was in pain. It was a very tough decision. And I thought about so many of the people who were in that same situation, and it ended so terribly wrong. The past year of personal experiences of seeing what my wife has gone through, not only throughout now, but throughout her life, has strengthened my resolve and molded me into a fierce, loud, and passionate advocate for everyone in this room and across the 5 boroughs. And I do know and remember all of the people I've met along the way who I try to carry with me whose story ended so tragically. And I'm thankful for the privilege my wife and I had that so many have not. And I'm thankful that even though Amani Isadora was born 2 months early, she is healthy now, and my wife is cancer-free. And today we have the opportunity, thank you. Today we have the opportunity to take some major steps. After years of work and partnership, today the City Council will be voting on a package of legislation, including some of mine, to establish a maternal health bill of rights and ensure that pregnant women, pregnant people are informed of those rights. Information is essential to body autonomy, and empowering people to seek the care they deserve, and anyone giving birth in New York City should know the rights and options available to them. This legislation will make that information available when patients need it the most. The City Council will also vote on resolutions, as the Speaker mentioned. We need action at all levels of government on this issue. Today, the city is taking action, and we hope our federal and state partners quickly follow. We know this is not the end and be all by any stretch of the imagination. I'm reminded by someone who mentioned at a press conference earlier that she'd been working on it for 35 years. 35 years, and this is the first time any legislation has been put forth. And it's not lost on me that even though we put this out a few years ago and people have been working for decades, it took a majority woman council led by a black woman to get something done. Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Adams. Thank you, Chair Shulman. Thank you to Bronx Borough President Gibson. Thank you to the Women's Caucus who championed this issue. To the BLAC, to so many council members who have the bills of their own, to my staff, Jamila Rose, Veronica Aries, Nick Smith, Tish Green, and Casey Addison, who was stolen from me by Crystal Hudson, council member, but I want to give her her dues as well. And I want to just end by shouting out my father, may he rest in peace. He was an OBGYN. He specialized in taking cases and pregnancies that no one else would. So I hope he's proud. Peace and blessings, love and light to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Advocate, for sharing. As I said in our pre-stated press conference, this package of legislation is so personal to those of us that are a part of this legislation. And I'm appreciative to the Women's Caucus, led by my co-chairs, Council Members Lewis and Farias, for not just directing the Women's Caucus, but actually pulling the Women's Caucus in the direction that truly focuses on things that have been left behind, matters that have been left behind and not prioritized for far too long. And Public Advocate Williams, you are not a part of the Women's Caucus, nor have you ever been, as when we served together as council members, but your story is so compelling, and we are grateful to you to always be a part of the legislation that impacts so many women and women of color across the city of New York, and we are still grateful for your leadership. Thank you so much. With that, I will turn it back over to the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Speaker Adams, and thank you, Mr. Public Advocate, for being with us here today as well. We're going to now move into discussion of general orders. We're going to start with Councilmember Farias to speak on her land use item as we do.
Thank you again, Majority Leader. As I said before, this is a great and important day for me as the council member for District 18. I have my very first land use item on the floor. Today we're voting on a very important project for my Soundview community, particularly the project at 1810 Randall Avenue is one that I have been working on since the fall of 2021, before I was even officially sworn in as council member, and an item that my community has been anticipating. I have heard far too many stories of senior citizens, often widows on Social Security, folks on fixed incomes being priced out of our community or forced to live in substandard basement apartments because they were left with an impossible choice to choose between their rent, their medication, or their food. No one living in our city should have to make that choice. As public servants, it is our solemn responsibility to protect our most vulnerable populations, which includes our seniors. Soundview is an intergenerational community with many seniors who have lived in the community for generations. In Bronx Community Board 9, 12.4% of our residents are senior citizens, and we have too few affordable housing options for them if they choose to live out their golden years in the communities that they helped build. This land use item safeguards our aging community and protects their right to age in place, surrounded by friends and family without being displaced on their fixed incomes. Already nearly half of my constituents are identified by the census as rent burdened. Thus, I cannot underscore enough how necessary affordable senior housing is in the 18th district. And I urge and thank everyone here today on voting yes for this critical land use item for my community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Menon, followed by Councilmember Velasquez.
Thank you, Majority Leader Powers. Today I'm asking my colleagues to vote in favor of my bill, Intro 490, that would direct the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to provide sexual and reproductive health services and conduct research on health disparities within the city. This legislation codifies and requires DOH-MH to conduct outreach, education, and to provide support and referrals to people, particularly those who are low income and without health insurance, for abortion and family planning services, counseling and testing for HIV and sexually transmitted infections, routine screenings for breast and cervical cancer, and health education to promote reproductive health. Intro 490 is among the package of bills that the Speaker spoke about that ensures that New York City will always provide safe and accessible sexual and reproductive services for all who are in need. I first of all want to thank the Speaker. I want to thank Health Committee Chair Lynn Shulman, the bill drafter, Senior Legislative Counsel Harbani Ahuju, Deputy Chief of Staff Jeff Baker, and my team, my Chief of Staff Jonathan Shutt, and Legislative and Budget Director Brandon Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you. And now go to Councilmember Velasquez.
Thank you, everyone, for the birthday shout-outs. I really appreciate it. Let's go Yankees. I want to take a moment that I am blessed to have another year of life. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to represent not only my district, but being part of the majority female-led city council. When we're talking about what we're passing today, it's deeply personal, and I want to thank Public Advocate Jumaane Williams for his kind words, but also for his advocacy and never giving up the fight. This is deeply personal because I had a friend that I lost to maternal mortality, so this is for Cardell Street. So thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you. Are there any other council members who would like to sign up to speak as part of general orders? Okay, we'll move into today's agenda. We have the report of special committees.
None.
Reports of standing committees.
Report of the Committee on Finance, preconsidered intro 600, property tax rebate.
Coupled on general orders.
Preconsidered reso 288, transparency reso.
Coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on Health, intros 86A, 409A, 472A, 478A, 482A, 490A, and 509A, package on maternal health, mortality, and morbidity.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on Land Use, LU 73 through 77. The Lirio.
Approved with modifications and referred to the City Planning Commission pursuant to Section 197D of the New York City Charter.
Preconsidered LU 86 and Reso 297, and preconsidered LU 87 and Reso 298, 1810 Randall Avenue rezoning.
Coupled on general orders.
On the general orders calendar, intro 179A.
Laid over.
General orders calendar, LU 73 and Reso 299 through LU 77 and Reso 303, the Lirio 806 9th Avenue.
Coupled on general orders.
Resolution appointing various persons, Commissioner of Deeds.
Coupled on general orders, I now ask that the clerk take a roll call vote on all of the items coupled on today's general orders calendar.
Abreu. Ariola.
Aye on all except for intro 490A, which I am a no.
Aviles.
Aye on all.
Thank you. Ayala.
Aye on all.
Barron.
Aye on all.
Botcher.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Today, we are voting on a land use project in my council district. It's a 100% affordable building built on a MTA parking lot. It's going to include 59 units of supportive housing for formerly homeless long-term survivors of AIDS. It's going to include 39 units of moderate income housing. So we'll have people from a wide range of incomes and backgrounds living under one roof. It's going to make a very beautiful community. The commercial space, we were able to get a commitment to below market commercial space for Styles Market, which is a grocer whose vegetable stand was destroyed by a building collapse a few years ago, and he's been trying to get new retail space. We were able to get modifications to the zoning because this is located in the Special Clinton District. In the original zoning text, it would have applied to the entire district, so we were able to tailor it to this lot, and a number of modifications to the design. I really want to thank my staff. I want to thank everyone in the Land Use Division, the Community Board, and everyone that has been a part of this process. Thank you very much. Aye on all.
Thank you. Brannon.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Just very thankful and excited to pass the first property tax rebate in the city of New York in almost 15 years. It was a bipartisan effort, and putting money back in the hands of working and middle-class New Yorkers is a big deal, something that hasn't happened in a long time. I vote aye on all.
Brewer.
Aye on all.
Brooks Powers.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
So thank you. I'd like to speak in support of a few different items on today's agenda. First, I'm pleased to see the work that this council is doing to support our city's homeowners. Today, we are passing a $150 rebate for fiscal year 22 property taxes. After the economic hardship we experienced throughout the pandemic and the pressure of the inflation we have seen this summer, this rebate will provide some much needed financial relief and make New York a little more affordable for many of our homeowners. I'd like to also add my voice in celebration of the package of the maternal health package of bills we are passing today, and the leadership of my colleagues in the Women's Caucus, the Public Advocate Williams, and the Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson. This comprehensive bill package will safeguard maternal health and make pregnancy safer in New York City. It couldn't be clearer. When women lead, we fight for solutions to the issues that will impact generations to come. I am so proud to stand with my colleagues on this and our colleagues across government to continue this vital work. And with that, I vote aye on all.
Caban.
Aye on all.
Carr.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Just like to say a few words with respect to the transparency resolution we're voting on today. As I said on the record of the Finance Committee, this transparency resolution designates funds for Staten Island related to the Day Laborer Initiative, which have been the subject of ongoing discussions and deliberations, thoughtful discussions and deliberations on how best that money should be distributed and to whom. And those conversations had not yet ripened and come to a conclusion. And so I think it's unfortunate that that conversation and dialogue is being short-circuited by a decision today to distribute the balance of those funds that have been designated at the adoption of the budget back in June. And so in the spirit of a body that has been increasingly more small d democratic, I think we can strive to do better in the future. And that's why I'll be opposing the transparency resolution today. And so before I just indicate my votes, I'm simply going to disclose on the record that in the transparency resolution, we're funding CUNY, and my domestic partner is a student at CUNY. And with that said, I'm voting no on preconsidered resolution 288 and and introduction 490A, and aye on the rest.
De La Rosa.
Aye on all.
Farias.
Probably vote aye on all.
Feliz. Gennaro.
I vote aye, and I wish to be associated with the remarks of Council Members Brannan and Brooks Powers.
Gutierrez.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I'm really proud and grateful to have the support of my colleagues in passing intros 472A and 478A. As a new mother who gave birth with a doula by my side, I fully recognize my privilege. I was afforded a doula and a midwife, both women of color who advocated for me, kept me and my baby safe, and still at 8 months postpartum remain accessible, checking in on me constantly and maintaining my physical and mental health. Every woman and birthing person should have a positive birth experience and deserve quality care. Doula care is a human-driven approach that centers on the individual's needs of each birthing person, which can root out the issues of racial bias and the resulting poor health outcomes that exist throughout our healthcare system. This bill will not only provide women and birthing people in priority areas access to care from a doula, but a pipeline that creates more opportunities to train doulas. I am deeply proud that this is my first bill to be passed as a council member. I want to thank Speaker Adams for her leadership in unapologetically elevating the dire need in addressing health inequities and keeping Black and brown women alive. I'd also like to thank my Chief of Staff, Anna Bessendorf, and Senior Advisor, Anya Lear, for their tremendous work. I also want to thank our ancestors for this incredible gift of doulas. My own grandmother was a doula in our hometown of Tuluá in Colombia. July 20th was Colombian Independence Day, and I'm the first Colombian city council member. So today, passing my first day, I want to say, huepa and gracias.
Thank you, Councilor Gutierrez.
Hanif. Hanks.
Aye on all.
Holden. Councilmember Holden.
Councilor Holden, he gives a thumbs up, but we need to hear you too.
Aye on all. Do you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay, it's the headphones.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
I vote aye. I'm sorry, y'all.
Thank you. Hudson.
Aye on all, and I'd like to disclose for the record that my domestic partner works for Planned Parenthood Federation of America, which we are funding in the transparency resolution.
Joseph.
Aye on all.
Kagan.
Aye on all. Aye on all.
Thank you. Krishnan.
Just for the record, I want to disclose that my child is in the Department of Education. My wife is at the Bronx Defenders. And with that, I vote aye on all.
Lee. Lewis. Marte.
Aye on all.
Mealy. Menon.
Aye on all.
Moya. Narcisse.
Aye on all.
Nurse.
Aye on all.
Osei.
Aye on all.
Palladino.
Aye on all except for 490A, which I vote no.
Rustler.
Aye on all.
Richardson Jordan.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
I am an aye on all, including the pre-considered intro 600 rebate for homeowners. And while in support, I also just want to take the opportunity to say that we as a body must also be looking at what we can do to secure housing for those who are renting, and particularly for the most vulnerable. I'm looking forward to seeing some of this same support for Introduction 637, which is being brought to the floor today, and of which I am a proud co-sponsor, transferring city property to nonprofits and community land trusts. Housing is a human right. Aye on all.
Reilly.
I just want to state for the record that my daughters go to public school in the Department of Education, and my wife works for Montefiore Medical Center, and we are all members of the YMCA. I on all.
Rivera.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm disclosing on the record of the council proceedings that the New York City Police Department is funded in the transparency resolution we are adopting, and my mother is an employee of the entity for 41 years. I also want to just say today I stand in proud solidarity with my colleagues in the Women's Caucus in the city's first Women Majority Council in the fight to address the devastating and preventable impacts of the maternal mortality crisis, which disproportionately affects Black and Latina New Yorkers. Every person has a fundamental right to give birth with access to information, dignity, and autonomy, and I'm really proud of the steps that we've taken today, Madam Speaker, and to all of my colleagues. Our state has the 12th highest cesarean section in the country. Our bills will address this in supporting state legislation mandating that all maternity patients receive culturally competent notices of the risk associated with C-sections. And Black maternal mortality is a preventable crisis. We must listen closely to birth workers, healthcare providers, advocates, and use every tool at our disposal to shape a city where giving birth is not a potential death sentence. So I just want to thank you all. I'm very, very proud to be a part of this body, and I proudly vote aye on all.
Thank you. Salamanca. Sanchez. Schulman.
Aye on all.
Stevens.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Women's reproductive rights across this country are under attack, and it's extremely important that we continue to fight back, and the City Council continues to show its leadership on this issue. As a woman, a daughter, a mother, and a member of the First Majority Women's Council, I'm honored that my first bill that I'm passing today is part of the reproductive package that will save the lives of Black women across the city. 2 years ago, when I decided to run for office, my sister's best friend passed away less than 24 hours after giving birth. Therefore, I made reproductive health a major part of my campaign platform. When my sister's best friend said that she was in pain, no one listened. But this city council is listening, and we hear you all. We don't just hear you, we more than we understand, and together we are making things happen. This historic reproductive package will save lives of women and birthing people of this great city. Thus, today, casting my vote as yes, I do it in honor of all the Black women we lost while giving birth. And I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Ong.
Aye on all.
Velasquez.
I'd like to disclose my husband is a deputy commissioner at DEP, and my brother is a board member at Samaritans, New York. Aye on all.
Vernikov.
Aye on all except no on 490A. Thank you.
Williams. Juan. Borelli. Powers.
I vote aye, and just after the speaker votes, if you can go back to Councilmember Barron and Councilmember Farias, they have disclosures to do.
Sure. Councilmember Barron.
I'd like to disclose that my son works for BRIC, Arts and Media Brooklyn, Inc., and it's funded by the City Council.
Thank you. Councilmember Farias.
I'd like to disclose and state for the record that my sibling attends MS 127 Castle Hill School, which is listed and funded in the transparency resolution, and my parent is an employee at NYU Langone.
Speaker Adams.
Aye on all.
Light day. All items on today's general order calendar are adopted by a vote of 38 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, with the exception of Intro 490A, which was adopted by a vote of 35 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, and Resolution 288, which was adopted by a vote of 38 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions. We'll now move to the introduction and reading of bills.
All bills have been referred to committees as indicated on today's agenda.
Thank you. We'll now move into the discussion of resolutions. We have Councilmember Barron signed up.
Thank you very much. I rise to speak on Resolution 283. Be honest with y'all, it's a damn shame that 2 parents and 2 teachers have to join a suit to go to a white judge to get a black mayor and a black city council speaker and a majority people of color city council to restore money to our children who are majority black and brown in the education system. It's a shame that this has to happen.
Councilmember, are you speaking on a resolution we're voting on today?
Yes, I thought.
Or is this for general discussion?
I thought this was the education resolution.
That's being.
Is that
it's
on
being
the calendar?
introduced today. I don't think we're voting on it.
Okay. Well, I'll save mine for the general discussion.
Okay, we have you signed up. Thanks so much. Any other council members signed up to vote on, to speak on today's resolutions before we vote? Okay, thank you. We're now going to have a voice vote on today's resolutions. If you wish to vote against or abstain from any of today's resolutions, please notify the Legislative Documents Unit by email or by approaching the dais before the vote. I'll now read today's resolutions into the record. Resolution 92 calls on the United States Congress to pass and President Joe Biden to sign the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act of 2021. Will all those in favor please say aye?
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Resolution 95 calls on the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign Assembly Bill 217 and Senate Bill 2736 relating to informing maternity patients about the risks associated with cesarean sections. With all those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Resolution 205 calls on the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation making doulas more accessible to individuals with Medicaid and those without health insurance. Will all those in favor please say aye? All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And finally, Resolution 244 calls on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to provide expanded funding for the Healthy Start Brooklyn Doula Program, known as By My Side, in order to make doulas available for all low-income birthing people in New York City. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. We'll now move into today's general discussion. We will start with Councilmember Barron, and we'll be followed by.
As I was saying, it's a damn shame.
Hold on. Let me finish. We'll have Councilmember Barron, who is very eager to speak, followed by Councilmember Kagan. I'll call on Councilmember Barron now. Now.
It's a damn shame that it took 2 parents, 2 teachers to be a part of a lawsuit to get a black speaker, a black mayor, a majority people of color city council to take care of black children and the budget. We had the power to do it without the mayor being forced by this lawsuit to do it. It's a shame. And the mayor had a nerve to appeal it, and then the appellate term is now saying, hold up, before we could take care of our children. It's a shame. We should have done the right thing from the beginning. I want to commend my council member colleagues who voted no. And yes, I'm going to say it each time because we need to learn lessons from this. Not those of us who voted no, but those of us who didn't need to learn lessons from this. Secondly, I'm introducing a resolution on lifting the embargo and the ban of traveling on Cuba. Cuba was a country that offered aid during the Katrina disaster in New Orleans to take care of our people. I went to Cuba and I went to the International Medical Center, and when I got there, that's one of the best in the world. To my surprise, 2 students from East New York was being fully funded by the Cuban government to go to school and get a medical degree, funding that they couldn't get here in the United States of America. So I want us to put this resolution together. We need to lift the ban, especially now because there was a super tanker in Cuba that exploded. And a lot of people have been hurt and injured. Countries want to give humanitarian aid to Cuba to deal with that, but not this country is blocking that with an embargo. We need to lift the embargo. They want to lift it temporarily now to give humanitarian aid to Cuba. We need to lift it permanently. We will determine who our friends are and who our enemies are.
Right on time. Thank you. We have Councilmember Kagan, followed by Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you. Today I'm introducing 2 bills. Intro 621 will ban companies that charge fees for student debt relief that is already provided by the federal government and provide a cause of action for those who were scammed. As a parent, I know the pressures of paying for college, and my bill will be an important step for protecting students from these dangerous and predatory companies. Intro 622 will suspend meter parking regulations on the Asian Lunar New Year. Just like on New Year's Day or Christmas, the Lunar New Year is a time to gather and to celebrate, and for Asian Americans not to worry whether they paid their meters. Finally, tonight I will participate in a vigil in Bensonhurst for 19-year-old Derek Chen, who was recently senselessly killed at the parking lot of BJ's. We all need to do more to improve public safety for all New Yorkers. And also I would like to add that we are all elected to represent everybody, not to divide communities. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Gutierrez, followed by Councilmember Caban.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I just want to ask my colleagues in holding thoughts and prayers for the families of Daniel Vidal. He was a deliverista and a Bushwick resident who was killed while riding his bike in my district last week. My condolences to his wife, Rosa Maria Vidal, and his friends and his family. And just want to extend that we continue as a body to fight for safer streets for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Caban, followed by Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly talk about Intro 612. To put it simply, we need our eyes on New York City power plants. District 22 residents know firsthand what it's like to have fuel-fired power plants right in our backyard. We've got many of them, and we're not alone. All across the city, working-class New Yorkers, especially New Yorkers of color, live near power plants and risk exposure to combustion products or byproducts. Heat waves and other extreme weather events that affect plant performance are becoming more frequent and more intense, and the need for us to act is increasing. But right now, we're not engaging at an adequate level. The city's not required to track the state's oversight reports, nor are we required to respond when a plant is out of compliance, nor to proactively weigh in on any renewal processes or recommend improvements. And especially in the context of environmental racism and the climate emergency, this lack of engagement is unconscionable. We need to do better for residents of District 22 and the entire city. And so with this reporting bill, the Mayor's Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability will take a more active role in the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation mandated oversight. So neighborhood advocates and local community-based organizations will be able to keep their eyes on New York City power plants. And then I just want to briefly thank colleagues Richardson, Jordan, Nurse, and Juan for being pre-intro sponsors to this bill, and invite my colleagues to join us in that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Hanks, followed by Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you, Speaker Adams and Majority Leaders Powers, and my colleagues Botcher, Hanif, Menon, Osei, and our public advocate. Today, I am proud to be a prime co-sponsor of Intro 602, which will amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to determining and identifying Times Square as a sensitive location where concealed carry of firearms is illegal. This comes in light of Governor Kathy Hochul's announcing legislation outlawing concealed carry in sensitive locations such as airports and public transportation, entertainment venues, bars, restaurants, and houses of worship. It is crucial that our city clearly defines gun-free zones and may not fall into the state's definition, including Times Square. Everyone in this chamber and across our city is aware of the gun violence crisis that continues to pervade our streets, and the Supreme Court's decision on Ruin has made it even more imperative to take every action we can to prevent this crisis from worsening. As the chair of the Committee on Public Safety, I believe this bill is an important step in addressing and abating the epidemic of gun violence in our city, and I ask that my fellow council members to consider signing on as co-sponsors in this important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll hear from Councilmember Hudson, followed by Councilmember Osei.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and I'd like to thank Speaker Adams for championing both the package of legislation that we've just passed and also the legislative package that we're introducing today regarding MPV. I'm introducing legislation with the rest of the LGBTQIA+ caucus that is aimed at fighting the MPV outbreak. This first-in-the-nation legislative package will require the city to create a robust MPV response plan, establish an equity-based education and outreach strategy, ensure adequate vaccine access for communities most at risk of contracting the virus, strengthen MPV data reporting, and establish a permanent infectious disease vaccine scheduling portal, including for COVID-19 and MPV vaccine appointments. I'm particularly proud that all 7 members of the LGBTQIA+ caucus, Council members Bottcher, Caban, Carr, Jordan, Osei, Schulman, and myself, are introducing this legislation together. That's right. We're here, we're queer, and we're bipartisan. If we as queer people don't protect ourselves, then no one will. So today we're here to protect ourselves and those who are not queer, but also at risk of contracting this virus, from people currently incarcerated to folks in shelters. It's clear we still haven't learned from our experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, we're failing those most impacted by not tailoring our response to ensure equity. People of color comprise most MPV cases, but they've only received a fraction of available vaccines, the majority of which have gone to white folks. This legislative package will help address this inequity by ensuring communities most impacted receive vaccines and requiring greater reporting from DOHMH so we can respond in real time. I'd like to thank my staff, Casey Addison, Andrew Wright, and Alejandro Gonzalez, for their work, as well as Senior Legislative Counsel Jesse Fong, without whom we wouldn't have this package. I urge all of my colleagues to co-sponsor this package and work with my colleagues and me for its swift passage. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Councilmember Osei, followed by Councilmember Ariola.
Thank you, Majority Leader. After 2.5 years suffering at the hands of COVID-19, it's unfortunate that these bills that I am introducing with the LGBTQ caucus are necessary. It's also undeniable. The monkeypox outbreak could soon spiral out of control, wreaking havoc on our city. But this is not spring of 2020. We already have the vaccine. We are familiar with the virus, and maybe most importantly, we have the hard-learned lessons that coronavirus has taught us. These are lessons in epidemiology, and these are lessons in equity. We remember clearly who bore the brunt of COVID's initial rampage. We remember the virus foolishly referred to as first as a sort of great equalizer, instead cut nearly along lines of race and class in our city. But this time can be different. We as members of the Council's LGBTQIA caucus are taking action to ensure that our city is not just ready to combat the next public health crisis, but to ensure access and equity as well. I'm proud to support the LGBTQIA caucus's monkeypox package, including my own bill, Intro 631. Under Intro 631, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene will be required to publish a report on the number of monkeypox cases and available vaccines in the city. The report will include the demographics of cases and vaccine recipients by borough of residence, age, race/ethnicity, and sexual orientation and gender identity. A report with data on how many vaccines are available and who is receiving them will allow the Council to quantify distribution, equity, and improve access. This package of bills will equip us to both fight the outbreak and ensure that no person or community is overlooked. Together with my colleagues in the LGBTQIA caucus, we are prepared to contain and combat this virus. I urge the Council to quickly pass this legislation so that we can finally cage the monkey. Thank you.
We'll go now to I don't understand that last part, but we'll now go to Councilmember Ariola, followed by Councilmember Bajo.
Thank you, Majority Leader. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Mike Long. Mike Long was a member of this body from 1981 to 83 as a council member at large. He's the 30-year leader of the Conservative Party. He was a friend and a constituent. Mike retired as the chair of the State Conservative Party in 2019. He is survived by his wife Eileen, 9 children, and 24 grandchildren. He will be missed by all who knew him. May he rest in God's eternal peace. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilmember Ariola. I'm sorry for your loss. We'll now go to Councilmember Bottcher, followed by Councilmember Brewer.
Today, I'm introducing alongside Council members Joseph and Lee legislation that would require the Department of Education to distribute information to students about the 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline, along with suicide prevention information. And before the stated meeting today, we had a pretty emotional press conference. Councilmember Menon talked about her son's friend who took his life at age 15. That is the age I was when I tried to take my life, but I was lucky. I was hospitalized, but I am here today. What I did not have before my suicide attempts was any information or resources of any kind. That was a different time in the early 90s, and I don't blame my family or the school. It was a different time, a different place. But now we have resources for young people. We have help, and we need to make sure that we're getting that to young people in every school in the city. And I feel so privileged to be here and to be in a position to help do that with this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Brewer, followed by Councilmember De La Rosa.
Thank you very much. I know that we're maybe tired of hearing about helicopters, but we have to keep up the pressure. So we have a Reso 291, which is what we really want. It's obviously the federal government stepping in, the FAA, to ban all non-essential helicopter travel, including tourist and chartered helicopter flights over New York City. So it's a resolution in support, and I hope you all sign on. Secondly, I want to thank the Speaker for the resolution and the support on the education dollar fight. Just to give you an example, because I think people don't, I have, 2 schools losing 4 teachers, excess, but then I talked to a school today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 arts programs that would be cut because that is lack of money. And it existed, they've been there for years and years and years. It's just an example. You cannot have schools without these kinds of programs. YPC, Bloomingdale, Symphony Space, ballroom dancing, food programs, ballet programs, tech programs, and scholarships, all gone unless we can get this funding, and this is a Title I school. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, and we have to keep fighting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember De La Rosa, followed by Councilmember Brooks Powers.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, if you could look on the agenda, there's 2 bills. I introduced with Councilmember Velasquez. Happy birthday, Marjorie. On workers' rights, I'll leave that to you to read and please support. We joined 32BJ this afternoon on a rally on these bills, and it's important work for these workers that have been exploited. I want to turn my attention to a tragedy that occurred in my district just last week. We lost 2 members of our uptown community in a fatal crash. Unfortunately, they were just pedestrians who were in the wrong place at the wrong time and were fatally struck and killed. Of the two people that were killed, we lost Joel Adames, 31 years old, and David Fernandez, 40-year-old, who I actually went to the same elementary school with. These victims of this fatal crash have left an undeniable pain that is running deep in our community right now. David was laid to rest this morning with his family completely devastated because we lost someone who was a person of light. He was internationally known for his salsa dancing skills, and he was a very skilled barber. He brought joy in every room he walked into, and he didn't have to lose his life on that corner of that street, leaving his work. And so all the more reason for us to enforce stronger regulations to keep our streets safe. We just heard from Councilmember Gutierrez on a death in her district. It continues to happen. I look forward to working with this council to make sure that our streets are safe, that dangerous intersections are taken care of, reckless driving is cracked down on, speeding as well, and that we continue to invest in street infrastructure that prioritizes our communities. I want to send my condolences to both the Adames and Fernandez family, and may David and Joel rest in eternal peace. Our community has certainly been shattered by this loss. One more second. This Sunday, on a lighter note, we celebrate the Dominican Heritage Parade on 6th Avenue. 1 out of 8 New Yorkers is of Dominican descent. I look forward to marching with our speaker and the city council in that celebration as we celebrate the joy that is characteristic of our community, the work and the triumph that this community has done as immigrant communities have across the city. So join us on 6th Avenue. There will be plenty of music. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Brooks Powers and followed by Councilmember Vilas.
Thank you. I would like to highlight Resolution 292 that I'm introducing with Public Advocate Jamani Williams, calling on the state to allow commuter vans to accept street hails. Commuter vans, or dollar vans as we called them when I was growing up, are an integral, if informal part of our transportation system and an iconic feature of many neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. Since the era of the two-fare zone, commuter vans have provided New Yorkers with an affordable travel option and filled gaps in our network of trains and buses. It's long past time that the city and state legalize this piece of our city's streetscape and support our commuter van drivers. I urge my colleagues to sign on. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Vilas.
Thank you, Majority Leader. And first, I want to thank all my colleagues for the incredible reproductive health package that was passed today. Today, I'm introducing 2 pieces of legislation that will help make New York City a bit greener and hopefully more climate resilient. As you know, current city law prohibits idling in front of schools for more than 1 minute. The logic for having such a law is obvious. We need to protect our children from the harmful impact of exhaust and particulate matter, as well as to prevent the exacerbation of asthma symptoms for children with this condition. This logic should apply to all those spaces our children occupy. And so today I'm introducing legislation that would make idling near our city parks, green spaces, and playgrounds for more than 1 minute also illegal. I'm also introducing legislation in conjunction with Councilmember Krishnan, which would require the Department of Parks to collect and report on data regarding community gardens and the sale of agriculture occurring within the city of New York. Community gardens play a vital role in the city of New York. These urban green spaces are not only a resource for often underserved communities to access fresh produce, but more and more these spaces are being recognized as vital to the city's long-term ability to be climate resilient. It is estimated that through New York City's network of more than 550 community gardens, the city is able to divert 165 million gallons of stormwater runoff from flooding our streets and sewers each year. Of course, as the supply chain volatility and summer storms become the norm in the years ahead, understanding through data how community gardens bring us closer to food sovereignty and climate resilience will help us better protect and expand these vital resources in our community and city. I encourage you all to sign on to these pieces of legislation. Thank you. And an extra thank you to Councilmember Barron. We must permanently lift the embargo on Cuba.
Thank you. And last, we'll hear from Councilmember Reilly.
I ask for unanimous consent to vote.
Are there any objections? You can go ahead.
Majority Leader, I would like to ask permission to vote on all land use call-ups, rezos, and general orders.
Go ahead, you can vote.
And I vote aye on all.
Thank you. Do
I'm
we have
not
anybody
finished.
else?
I'm not finished.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Today, I had the privilege and the honor to be with Miss Eleanor May Yu, born on August 14, 1915. Today is her 107-year-old birthday. Ms. May Yu was born and has been a staple of the community, and not just her family. The community at whole holds her up with high esteem. It was an imperative that I join the community with her today to celebrate this day. She is in a nursing home today in due of a hit and run. And one thing she said, I pray every day, and she said, God made the man who hit her, he picked her up and put her on the sidewalk and then drove off. And that still is investigating right now. So I just want to say I think that I had an opportunity. She's still dancing, talking, and she is one that still know everyone's name, 107 years old. And I just want to thank the Speaker and this body for passing such great legislation and reproductive services to women. Thank you. I did vote aye on all.
Good. Thank you, Councilmember Reilly. We just have an updated count on today's vote. So updating it, all items on today's general order calendar have been adopted by a vote of 40 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, with the exception of Introduction 490A, adopted by a vote of 36 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, and 0 abstentions. Resolution 288, adopted by a vote of 39 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions. And a revised land use call-ups vote is 40 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. I will now call on Speaker Adrian Adams to close today's stated meeting.
Thank you. The stated meeting of August 11, 2022 is hereby adjourned.